Welcome back to Dave's Diary Update, number 2 for the day. And can I say two things? Oops, and I had an idea. In fact, I'll do the second one first. Anyone that's got a track saw will probably have done exactly the same thing, and I've done this several times, and I thought, well, do other people do this? The answer's got to be yes. Sometimes it's inconvenient to get out your second track rail to join it together to make it longer, or you don't really trust the splinter strip that you've trimmed off to be able to register properly when you want to move your rail. I see it being done all the time, and I was quite impressed, but I don't have that confidence to make sure that when I move my rail that it's going to be 100% accurate and straight. So why can't you use a second rail to, like I've done there, you just clamp to it, if you've got one long enough, and just rest your rail up against it, and then when you slide it along, you've been assured that it's in line. Because I see them moving the rail along to a pencil mark, and I'm going, dang, that pencil line must be pretty darn accurate and straight and thin to get that accuracy that you'd normally would require. Now, I may be being a bit of a nervous Nelly about it, but I'm thinking the gap that was created, or the tolerance from the blade, when you've cut the strip, sometimes I look at it and I'm going, oh, I don't know. I might have mucked that up at one stage, and it's not bad. Actually, it's not too bad at all. So this one was lucky, this particular rail. One of the rails, because the saw had been on a wee bit of an angle, when it cut the strip, or has cut the strip later on, it has also affected the splinter guard, the splinter strip, anti-splinter strip, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, long story short, rather than rely on my eyeballs, the thickness of the line, the straightness, etc., I rely on a straight edge that allows me to slide my rail along to reposition it so that I know I'm in the correct alignment. Just saying. Now, what was the first point I mentioned? It was the oops and indeed. And that came about when I cut the two ends off, and totally oblivious to it. When the frames are made for the doors before they're skinned, the top, the rail, the bottom rail and the side rails are stapled together. They've got a little, and of course my lovely blade and my lovely Makita plunge saw, went through them. Went through 3 of them. 1 here and 2 on the other end. So now, I don't know whether it's because of the wood, that blade doesn't seem to cut like it used to. Oops. So, what you don't want to see with a plunge saw, any saw, is sparks. Because that kind of indicates your blade's no longer going to perform like it once did. So I'm going to have to pop off to the shop at some stage and grab a new blade. I was going to do anyway, to be fair. So it's not. That's why I carried on and cut the rest. And I thought, well, I've cut one, I might as well cut the rest of the. And I had actually contemplated getting a new blade anyway. So that's my excuse for my stupidity. So okay. That normally does cut nice. There seemed to be quite a bit of resistance, not too much, but I was imagining it probably, but a bit of resistance in doing that cut. So, I'm now at the stage where I can put the dowels in where I'm going to put the dowels, and glue them in, glue the whole strip, clamp it all together, and hopefully that'll be the end of it. What I'm contemplating doing, though, is this area here where the wee block is, I might just cut it out a little bit more square, insert a piece into it, and fix that in place. probably making that the closing side, so it doesn't really matter. I'll put the block in there and yeah, have at it. What's interesting, there's, for whatever reason, there's holes on each side of this door. Can't recall why that was ever required. That wasn't by me, but you can actually see. Oh, you probably can't see in there, but the honeycomb, ziggy zaggy sort of cardboard, and it's. You'd think it wouldn't be make a very strong door, but it makes an incredibly strong door. And it's actually that, I think the term was tensional skinned structure, the door, and you actually have doors like this made up of probably 4 mil, 4.5 mil, 5 mil custom wood on either side, MDF either side, held apart by those wafer thin, the cardboard wafers, and makes it very, very strong. How strong? Well, the idea? Well, in fact, there are some flooring systems that use exactly that approach. And one of the builders at work went to a seminar about it, and that's where the tensional skin and the top and bottom of the floor was in tension, or the top one would be in compression, of course. But he said when you walked across it, it actually had a sprung feel. And he said that was disconcerting, and it probably put a lot of people off buying it because it's they don't feel like it's strong enough, and you walk across it. And but he said design wise, apparently they're very, very strong. Here's a question: have you ever walked in a large concrete building when you can feel the floor move? That's working on that same principle where the tensioning members, probably the tendons, the steel, has been preloaded or post-loaded, post-tensioned, and you can get the whole floor of a concrete building flexing, perceivably flexing. In some, you don't need to know this, but you're going to find out anyway. Some structures, like they're designed like that, and I've picked that up in like airports, big substantial buildings. But anyway, that's irrelevant. Some buildings are so movable that in any high wind or sometimes seismic events, people get so freaked out they can't stay in the building. The building flexes or actually sways. They're actually designed to sway. If they don't, they snap and they break. And it can get so bad that people get seasick. And our company that I did my apprenticeship with, they had a tall building in Wellington, and it had the story went there that they had a double height floor, it wasn't 3 meters, it was 6 meters or whatever it was, and because the owner had it designed that way, and they had pendulum lights that in a wind, the pendulum lights would start to move. Well, you could say that the pendulum light wasn't moving. It was the whole building was moving backwards and forwards, and the pendulum's lights were showing up the movement of the building, and people had to go home because they were getting freaked out and seasick. And it's one of those little things that you learn, and you wished you hadn't sometimes. But buildings move a lot at the top, and they have to. So otherwise they snap and fall down. Okay, well, now that take note next time when you go into a building, if the floor, you'll know it because you feel, that floor feels a bit springy. Hang on, that's concrete. Well, yeah, it's very, very strong. Until it's not. I didn't say that. Rightio. Poor saw. Poor blade. Oh, well. I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.